I'm Daniel Chacon, and I'd like to thank you for joining me for this conversation. And I'd like to thank everybody who made this possible. Sergio Godoy, who was doing all the technical stuff, Ileana Pichardo Urrutia, Claudia Flores Ramirez, who are, those three are the team that is putting this together. And of course, I'd like to thank my guest, but I'm going to hold off on that for a second because I want to give you some context about today's conversation. And tomorrow we're having another one with another publisher, an independent publisher. Um, I'm chair of the Department of Creative Writing at UTEP. It's a bilingual MFA. And I'm chair not because I'm the most talented professor in the department. I'm chair because I'm the oldest professor in the department. And eventually you're going to have to do it. But fortunately, it doesn't happen until you're of a certain age. So I reached that age and I became department chair. And one of the things that I began to understand as I administered the program is how much the MFA has changed from the time that I graduated. I think I graduated in the year 2000 from the University of Oregon in their MFA program. And it was a great experience. But what everybody wanted after they graduated was a job. And by a job, I mean a job writing. And the only job that was available to writers were jobs teaching creative writing at the university level in an MFA program. That was pretty much what every writer wanted to do. And those who published good books and got some publicity around those books were usually able to find jobs, but it's not like that anymore. And when I graduated with my MFA, I don't know how many graduated the same year throughout the entire United States. So I'm going to make up a number. Let's say 500 graduated. There might have been 100 jobs. So it was always competitive. But now there are thousands and thousands of people who are graduating every year with MFAs, and they're all looking for jobs. But the academic jobs, teaching and creative writing programs have dwindled. And so what do? Well, one of the first things they do, because they love literature so much, and because they know there's so many good books out there that they've read from their colleagues, they start publication companies. So in part, this is UTEP Creative Writing Department's way of helping our graduate students and anybody else who cares about writing to find a way to make a living, or at least to occupy your time. And that's through publishing. There's a lot of people who are going to leave MFA programs publishing. So we want this conversation to be helpful to you. So I invited one of what I think is one of the most amazing presses, independent presses that came out in the last 5 to 10 years. There's a lot of presses coming out right now, but this one is kick-ass. Edward Vidaurre is kicking ass with FlowerSong Press. And I want to have a conversation with him to find out why he's doing it. But first, let me give you a little background. Edward is author of 7 collections of poetry with Pandemia and other poems, his most recent from Aztlan Libre Press. He is the 2018-19 City of McAllen, Texas Poet Laureate, the Director of Operations of the Rio Grande Valley International Poetry Festival, a 5-time Pushcart nominated poet, and of course, he is publisher of FlowerSong Press. Edward, thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. It's good to be here. It's good to be able to talk to the students from not only El Paso, but from all over. Hopefully, we're able to touch some, minds out there and give them some insight on publishing and on just, doing working with literature in general.
Awesome, awesome. So let me ask you, I got to ask, where are you at right now? Are you in your home office?
Yeah, I'm here in my oficina with where I have my libros and my mess and and just it's my comfy spot, you know. It's where I come and I do my writing and also where I package the books before I send them out. And um I also have my cat who's just had surgery. I have her here in a crate, so she lays here. Right now she walked away, but she hangs out in here and everything is pretty much a you know, it's a chill zone. It's a chill zone
Right.
right here. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you look very relaxed there. And thank you for reminding me. I just
Yeah.
opened my door because I know my cat would be wanting to come in.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, uh, Edward, you started Flower Song Press. Can you start with the story of Flower Song? Why? How did it
Okay.
give us the story of how it became what it is today?
Okay. Okay. So it I renamed it to Flower Song Press. It started with Flower Song Books through David Bowles. It was founded in 2011 as Vow Publishing, part of a nonprofit, Valley Artistic Outreach here in Donna, Texas. And the mission was to publish underrepresented voices from the borderlands. And in 2014, David Bowles renamed it Flower Song Books. And David needed to step away from the press after Valley Artistic Outreach dissolved itself. Um, and not wanting the RGV to lose the vital venue for literary voices, I offered to take over and run Flower Song as an indie press. So David was, you know, he was going to start working at the university. He wasn't going to be able to, you know, do much with publishing. He was already winning awards and writing. I mean, he's writing tons of books every year. And he published my book Chicano Blood Transfusion. And so me, the nosy author, hey, who are you publishing next? Who's going to be my press mate, my press brother, my press sister? I want to know. And we had a conversation and he's like, I don't think I'm going to publish anyone anymore. I'm too busy. So I offered to take over the press and we rebranded. We rebranded the logo. We rebranded the name. So we it became Flower Song Press, and I think before it became Flower Song Press, there were three or four titles that were published with mine in there. And since I took it over, we've published 54 titles, including anthologies, one children's book, and we've got 44 other titles in queue waiting to get published between now and the end of 2023.
Those are staggering numbers, Edward. 54 that you have published and 44, and you've only been around for how many years?
Three.
Those are staggering numbers. How do you do it?
I don't know. I they I'm crazy. Um, I do it with the help of a good community. I do work with two of the with a former Macallan Poet Laureate and the new Poet Laureate, which are Rodney Gomez and Priscilla Lina Suarez, who help with it. You know, they help with reading and editing, and you know, Lina helps me with typesetting and stuff like that. And I also work with Matthew Revert out of Australia. He helps me with cover art. So we work as a team, and they, I think they see the goal of Flower Song Press. They see
Mhm.
the importance of getting these voices out, and there's nothing like it. Um, I'm not saying we're unique. I'm not saying there isn't anything like it, but I think they see that there's a necessity and there's a need to continue getting the voices out, not only emerging voices but also, you know, the voices that have been around for a long time, you know, like Alurista, like the Reyes Cárdenas. You know, we look for those voices. And I'm a restaurant manager. That's my profession. You know, that's how I make money. I'm a restaurant manager. So I'm also I also look at recruiting. You know, when I go out to a restaurant and if I get good service, I'll try to recruit a server to come work for me. You know,
Mhm.
same with literature. If I read literature and I like it, and if it's someone that I read that was writing, you know, before my time, I look for them, you know,
Right.
and I look to see, and I've looked for authors, and I've, you know, some authors have passed away, some are still writing, but they're kind of like, you know, not really sought
Right.
after anymore, right? Kind of, I, I'm I'm looking for like that Albert Pujols, you know, if I put it in baseball terms, right? They
Right.
still have it. They're still important. They're still, um, you know, relevant, you
Mhm.
know. So, you know, I pay attention to the writers like Odilia Galvan Rodriguez and Lorna Di Cervantes and Alurista and all of those that have, you know, paved the way for us. Juan Felipe Herrera, you know, they they're important, you know, they're doing the work, you know. And so I am not only looking for the fresh and, you know, and upcoming voices, but I'm also looking for those that can also be there to inspire those that are, you know, working on their craft, and those that are, you know,
Right.
that are in the middle, you know.
The 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 traditional model of a publishing company has, I think, and I'm sure it's much more complex than this, but at least two elements. And one of those elements is that they curate books. They don't just publish them, but they curate them. They take them and they put them on the shelves and they send them out to reviewers and they, they promote. I guess is probably the umbrella term. Um, and the other quality of a traditional publisher is that they pay for everything. They pay for the cover, they pay for all the printing, and it can cost a lot of money. And so the writer, unless the traditional model sells, the writer makes absolutely no money at all. Um, with your untraditional approach and with 54 books in the last 33 years and 44 coming out soon, how do you have the time to, I assume that the traditional model is something that you just don't even uh, uh, worry about trying to achieve. So can you tell us a little bit of how your model might differ in terms of curating and paying for everything?
Hustle, you know, every day is waking up and finding a way to make a dollar. You know, I myself, my books, the ones that I publish, and the ones like my own books, the ones that I, you know, write, if ever whenever I sell my books, I put it back into my press. You know,
Right.
yes, I look for donations, I do fundraisers when possible.
But you're not a
No,
nonprofit.
I am not a nonprofit, you know. So and sometimes I become an introvert, and that doesn't help me either, because, you know, how do I go out and look for that? I do apply for grants. um um you know, I try to do what everyone else does to get that money for the
Right.
arts, you know. And I'll get, you know, and I'll try to get myself into schools and do readings and stuff like that. And you know, sometimes I get them, and sometimes, hey, can you come and read for us at the school, and we're going to pay you this much. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, okay, cool. I go and there's a cable bill, and there's a book cover.
Uh,
There's a phone, there's a car bill, and there's a, you know 25 books that are going to go to the author, you know, that I send to each author when they get published. So I budget, but I also make moves here and there, you know. So
25,
it's
you give
not
them
it's not
25
easy.
copies?
Yeah,
That's very generous. The traditional
yeah.
model is 10 to 20 at the most.
I've heard three at some places. Yeah, you know, it's and I don't know, you know, I might, they might, like I say, people say I'm crazy, but um you know, it's you're not people that get into poetry, for example, for the money, and if that's what they're looking for, it's difficult. It's going to be a difficult ride, you know. It's I think it's hard to write when you're thinking money. You
Right,
know,
right,
I think it's, you know, I don't think I go into writing a manuscript thinking I hope I make money from it. You
right,
know, it's not it's it's not something that's in my mindset. You know, I'm thinking, you know, I'm writing so that I leave an important piece of work,
mm,
for generations to come. You know, just like the books that I'm reading now from people that are long gone and are still relevant or are still inspiring or still healing. You know, that's the point in writing, and that's what I look for when I'm reading manuscripts. You know, is this manuscript important? Is this manuscript important to the author? Does is this author putting their heart and soul into their words, or are they just trying to put out a book to say I have a book, or are
right,
they putting out a book just to see if they can, get the attention of the of people, and you can read through lines sometimes, but I'm very I have an unorthodox way of reading manuscripts. um i I read them, so in so many ways, and I try to get into the words. I try to make them my own. I try to see what it is that the author is thinking, and sometimes I'll even ask the author to read a poem to me so I can feel the energy of what they were trying to say. And
yeah.
sometimes it does things for me, and sometimes, it tells me a different story.
Right. That seems pretty wise. When a publisher sends a manuscript to the printers, they usually tell the writer uh, what the first run is going to be. It's going to be like with poetry, 300 with independent presses have been uh, uh, familiar numbers with short story collections, 1,000. But I don't imagine it's economically feasible for you to use that. Say, okay, we're going to get so I imagine the printers you use have a print on demand option.
Right. I've used both. I've used print on demand, and I've used some that are, well, you have to order this many, and I see the differences between both. And I just have to look at, I guess, at each author, you know, as
Right,
they come, right? And see what kind of and the pre-orders say a lot too.
right,
It tells me a lot on how that works, but print on demand usually does well for both, because I don't want to stick it to an author and say, well, you have to order, so many books so that you could get a better price, because I've used some print shops where even ordering books, and then the author wouldn't make any money from it because I couldn't even give a discount, you know. Um, Off the retail, they were not gonna make much.
uh-huh. So I got the copy of Dreaming with Mariposas by Sonia Gutierrez.
Yeah.
Fantastic book. Um, and so let's say you send her 25 copies and she sells them immediately by doing readings.
Yeah.
Does she order, according to the contract, does she order additional books, which usually is as at a 40% discount for the writer? Does she order them through you, or can she go directly to the printers to order them?
She orders through me, and I offer a better than a 40% for my authors.
What do you offer?
50.
That's perfect. I think that's fair. That's absolutely fair. That's awesome.
Yeah. Because,
Because
they're they I
your writers can make money off their books. And
right.
That's really important, I think, that,
Yeah.
a writer does not want to get in with the publishing company that's going to trap them. And if there is any money, they get it all and everything has to go through that. I think
Well,
that's
I
perfect.
I think they, with the 25 that they get or initially, I always say, sell those and
Absolutely.
reinvest in getting more books, because that's full profit. You get 25 books and you sell those, and that's a full profit. Yeah, you want to give, maybe some to, maybe mom and dad and brother, or maybe to the people that gave you the blurb. You want to sign one and give it to them. But like, if you want to give a desk copy to someone or a review copy to someone and you have those contacts, get with me and I'll send it to them.
Yeah. Well,
As a
that's good.
publisher,
That's
I'll
good.
do that.
Right.
But try to sell those as much as you can,
Yeah,
you know.
I'm wearing a T-shirt right now. It says "Open Books, Open Minds," and it's from the Literary Bookshop here in El Paso, which, by the way, carries some of your titles. He's
Yeah,
incredibly the owner's name Bill Clark, incredibly
Bill
supportive
Clark.
of Latinx literature and
Yeah,
supportive
he's awesome.
press and other
Yeah,
small presses. But it's really important, I think, for us as writers. Uh, to support independent, not only independent presses and independent bookstores like Literarity in El Paso, the greatest bookstore,
right.
the greatest little bookstore in Texas.
Yeah,
um,
Bill's cool. Yeah, I've sent him some books and stuff, and he's ordered from me, and you know he's a class act when it comes to dealing with and supporting our uh our authors. Yeah, he's awesome. I
Absolutely,
love Bill.
absolutely. And so you have the independent publisher, and there's a proliferation of independent publishers. Most of them coming from out of an MFA and thinking, what am I going to do with my life? And your story, of course, is completely different. You don't have an MFA. You're a restaurant manager. And by the way, I don't know how you can be a restaurant manager and do anything other than sleep when you're not managing the restaurant, because it's such long hours and such hard work. But uh, independent presses, independent publishers, and independent writers, the game has changed. It used to be a press you would get picked up by a press, and then you open up the bottle of champagne and wait for the phone to ring and do all those interviews. At least that was the idea. But now writers have to hustle, and they have to. They're not getting really high paying gigs just because they have a book out, because there's so many books out coming out every year, literally in the millions every year in
Right,
the United States. I think it's something like 6 million. So a writer really
right,
has to publish. And so independent publishers need to give independent writers the opportunity to make money. And it sounds like that's what you're doing, and not to make money to be rich, but to make money so they can write the next book or whatever, to feed
right,
their
right.
family. What's your contract like?
Short, 2 pages. um it's 50-50. It's like I said, I'm not trying to do too much, and I'm not trying to take much. I want to, of course I don't want to go under either.
Right.
But yeah, it's that's what it is. That's how I do it. But going back to the authors and the hustle, what I always tell authors, and especially because I went through that with my first book. I thought, well, I didn't have an MFA. I didn't know about books. I just, thought
Right.
that my publisher was gonna, take care of me. I was really ignorant about it, and maybe I didn't ask the questions, and maybe I just didn't know. Maybe they assumed that I should have known, but either way, um, nothing happened. And but but the book still exists, and what I tell my authors is, you're I could have 7 books, but if someone hasn't read my first book, it's still a brand new book. It's a new book to everyone who has not read it.
Right.
So I've got 7 books here that I can sell, that I can hustle. Even though I have a book that just came out last year, It doesn't mean that I don't have a book that I published 7, 8 years ago that's still not relevant. We're still reading, we're still reading Lorca. And if that were the case, well, this book is from 19, whatever, 20, 30 years ago. It's not old. It's still a good book. It's still something to read. So we have to continue letting people know we have this book. Do you have it? You don't? Here it
Right.
is. You should buy it.
What,
So the hustle is all the time. Your book is new to everyone who has never read it. There
that's
you
a
go.
that's fantastic. Very well stated. One of the things that when you publish writers, and by you I mean any publishing company, the writer may have expectations based on popular culture images of the writer. They may expect a book tour, and they may expect, again, my image was the champagne, and the day the book comes out, you just wait for the phone calls and you get interviewed on Oprah, and because it's a big deal. But it doesn't work that way. That model just does not exist anymore, period.
Right.
uh, Such a statistical aberration that if it were a scientific concept, it would just be unproved.
Right.
It would be an anomaly. And so writers, however, they still have that image. And I'm wondering if you have a challenge with sometime explaining to writers what the limits are of an independent publisher.
Sometimes I have to explain things, but I let them know, and if I don't know, I do research to find out. For example, Barnes and Noble, getting a book inside Barnes and Noble. Just because the book is published doesn't mean it automatically goes to Barnes and Noble.
Oh
You
no,
know,
very few go to Barnes and Noble. Very, very
if especially like I have a Barnes and Noble here, and it doesn't have a great poetry selection, but if you go, they have, you know, um, the obvious choices, right? And it's mostly poetry by people that are dead, and to get in there, and then they say, well, you have to go through so much red tape to get it in there. And if you're lucky, you're able to do a reading on site, and that's when they order your book. And so you have to get somebody to order it. I
right.
guess they have to pay for it to get the book shipped to them, and then it's in their database. But like, for
But if it doesn't
example, our
sell out
books,
to
they
me,
go
it's privilege.
our like our books go to Barnes and Noble and Amazon and Target and all the website
Right,
options to buy. You can buy from target.com. You can buy the book at barnesandnoble.com. But the in-store places, they have to order it, but someone has to want it there.
right.
And it's not that easy. I mean, think about it.
But
44 Flower Song press titles, you know, they would
that,
have to set up their own shelf just for us. And that'd be wonderful if the local Barnes and Noble said, hey, we have a local author or a local press. Let's put a shelf
right.
of just our local press, and let's highlight our local press and be proud of them. But I mean,
And
it's
and that's that you're bringing up a really important point, because if a writer published by an independent press, or even a university press, which will also not get on the shelves of Barnes and Noble. If a writer wants to be in a bookstore, a writer needs to visit a bookstore and say, hey, introduce themselves and say, hey. And they can't just pick up the phone and say, okay, can you sell my book? They need to go in there, and they need to use some sort of public relations to get on not only on the shelves, but set up a reading,
right.
because Barnes and Noble is used to a lot of self-published authors trying to set up readings, and so they filter. Uh,
Right. And that's where maybe the big presses have one up on us because they have the budget, they have the capital to pay the people to reach out to do that, whereas small presses, you know, we do everything. We're the marketing, we're the agent, we're the uh publicity, we're the uh typesetter, cover artist, marketing person, we're everything, distributor sometimes, and so it's a little more work for us. But again, we're an indie press, we're small presses, and sometimes working with a community, and collaborators, it helps. Lucky for me, a lot of the authors with FlowerSong Press, they come together as family, and they offer, to what can I do,
Right.
or I'm doing this, what can I do, and they offer to help, or they do something and then let me know they did it, and that's amazing, and that's great, and it benefits everyone, you know um because they know that if they do something, that's good for one author, it goes down the line, when one of our authors wins a book prize, then somebody goes into our website and they go in and check everybody out,
And
you know
didn't one of the novels you just published win the fiction award with the Texas Institute of Letters?
yeah, that was, I have it right here, that was Loose at Midnight here. And the book that you have won the Tomas Rivera Award.
Nice. Wow. That's big. Yeah, that's the one that
So,
one of the titles Bill Clark has in the literary bookstore,
right.
literarity bookstore right here in El Paso. Uh,
Yeah.
so just uh, briefly, I'm showing, or I thought I was. Am I sharing my screen? I think everyone can see my screen. FlowerSong Press.
Yeah.
This is your homepage. And it's a very good homepage, by the way. I mean, homepage. It's a very good web page. I want to know. I'm wondering who designed this web page for you, and did it cost a lot of money? It's really very efficient. You hook on authors, and then you can go down to any of the authors there. Um, Here is one of my Facebook friends, Joe Reyes Boitel, uh, and then you can go back and so who did this web page for you?
This was actually designed by Nicole Bowles, who is David Bowles' daughter.
Oh,
She's great at graphic design, and she's the one who set up our logo. Also, she's the one who put our logo together, changed it from Flower Song Books to Flower Song Press. Yeah, so she's amazing.
so
She also did the cover art for Cesar de Leon's new book, that's there. Speaking with grackles under soapberry trees.
now I want to ask you a little bit before we go. We're kind of running out of time about Juventud Press. Now, if it wasn't enough that you were doing 54 titles in 3 years or 100 something, in 4 years, you started an imprint, a children's imprint. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
It's a children's and young adult imprint. So we just published our first children's book, and it's by Regina Moya and Carmen Tafoya, and it's The Last Butterfly, La Última Mariposa, and it's
Nice.
got beautiful artwork on the inside. It's bilingual. And it's got beautiful illustrations. And we also put out I Sing the Body, a book about it's an anthology about body image, and that's a YA anthology. And so we've got some stuff in the works for the YA section, and yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to get into that part of literature, because it's not only poetry, but we also got into, like you said, the novels, and we're looking at reading memoirs as well, and just different types of things. We want to cover everything.
And right here under submissions, if you scroll down, you're accepting full-length manuscript submissions for poetry, prose, short stories, and more. Um, and so they can submit directly through the webpage if they have something. Um, when a writer submits an excellent book, and obviously you've got some excellent submissions. I have a lot of them right here in front of me. This is a bilingual poetry collection. This is another poetry collection translated into English, and then here is yet another poetry collection. You have some great books that you get to publish. What can you tell the writer? This is what FlowerSong Press will do for you and your book.
Well, we'll work hard for you. We'll make sure that you feel like you're part of something important, that you're part of something that's going to be around for a long time. That you're part of a family of literary heroes. Not just writers but heroes. I think that everybody who writes for Flower Song is doing something important. That we're making history. And so I wish I could publish everyone that sends something through, but I just want everybody to know also that if you're not accepted and your work is rejected at some point, that I'm still rooting for you and I'm still reading you, and that you're still important and your writings are still important, and maybe you didn't you know get into the press at that point, but doesn't mean that it's because your work wasn't good.
You sound like a very compassionate publisher, and that's certainly something that's needed in the publishing world.
Well, there's some works that I've rejected that sometimes it's not just one person. So there's some stuff that I've said no to, that others have said yes to, and then I've had to reread. And like I said, I have to go through manuscripts for a while, and then it depends what I'm feeling at the time. you know I read manuscripts more than once, because sometimes I'm in a weird mood. Sometimes I'll read something and I'll be like, I don't know about this. And then sometimes I read it and it pulls at the heartstrings. And then there's sometimes that I have to read it out loud, and so it,
There's actual research done that on judges in the UK and on bank loan officers in the US, that if they get an application uh, right before lunch when they're hungry, they tend to reject it disproportionately than when they first prepare and they're full and they're
right,
all happy. It does
right,
affect. It's very wise of you
right.
to
You know,
intuitive.
I've noticed that the best time for me to read, for something to really stick with me till the next day and I wake up remembering and even feeling something, a paragraph, is right before bed when I'm really, really tired. And I've
Wow,
got a couple of books on my
that is
nightstand.
interesting.
I have a couple of books on my nightstand that I'm reading right now. One is by Richard Wright, uh, that just came out recently, and the other one is Pablo Neruda's memoirs that just came out recently also. And so I'm reading little bits and pieces of each book at a time before bed. And sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes it's 15 minutes. But that amount of time sometimes stays with me, and the words stay with me longer than if I read for an hour.
uh, a real quick procedural question: who does your copy editing?
There's there's a there's a there's a few of us that go in there and do different things. But right now it's myself. Um, Rodney Gomez helps me. Lino Suarez helps me. Um,
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of work. You must really love what you do. And you know what? One of the things that really kind of shows your love for what you do is your partner, who you work with. Can you tell us a little bit about your partner, the
my
one
wife,
the one that lives with you? You
yeah,
said your daughter is
yeah.
you out.
My wife helps me out tremendously. She keeps let me just tell you, she set up the ring light
Uh-huh. Oh,
That's why
so
you
so
could
that's
see
why you look
my,
so beautiful and I look so
that's
ugly.
why that's why you can see my the glow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
She set me up with coffee. She sets me up with water. She sets me up with, she right before she brought me some sugar-free chocolate.
Wow.
But she sets it all up, and she takes the dogs out so that if they start barking, it's not close enough for them to disrupt. But yeah, and if it's a really long interview, sometimes she'll just open the door and like put a little plate of snacks. So
Oh,
I mean, she does that when I'm doing this, but other than that, she'll like help me get the books in packages, write out the addresses. If I have to go to work in the morning and I tell her, these books need to go out today, she'll take them to the post office and send them out, for me. And sometimes she'll go through some of the reading, and I'll tell her, hey, look at the cover art options, tell me what you think. And she'll tell me, I like this one, and she'll tell me why.
if
you
there's
know
one thing I know about your wife, we were Facebook friends before I quit social media, is she has an incredible aesthetic sense.
she does. And another thing is, she's also the one of the best writers I know that doesn't write.
Uh-huh.
That the day she puts pen to paper, she's going to be the best writer in the family.
Wow.
And I tell her that. And she did a project with Rene Saldana Jr. in the last anthology for the youth anthology that we put together. And he interviewed her and some friends, and it's like the intro to the book. And he saw something, that and he's like, man, you have to write her story. She needs to write a book. And she's got it, she's got it. It's just, um she needs to do it, but she helps in so many ways. And my daughter, of course, she gets in here and she likes to do the labels when I'm sending packages. When it's a whole bunch of packages, I go, right, let's send out pretty labels with the logo on it. If it's 2 3 packages, we kind of handwrite it. But when it's a whole bunch, she's on the computer and she knows how to get into the label maker and stuff, and she's pounding away. And I'm like, man, she's fast. I was like, I'm right there, and I'm like, man, my eyes are giving out. It's like, I have to make the screen, make the size larger for me to see the addresses. But she's quick. So it's slowly, she was doing some editing for a book. I told her, I want you to write everything, because I got sent a manuscript, in snail mail. The lady didn't have access to a computer. So I told her, you need to transfer all this to a computer, to Word document for me, Bella. And while she was doing that, she'd come to me and say, Dad, I think I think this is wrong. And I'd go, yeah, correct it. You're right. That's, correct it or highlight it, and we'll go back to it, and we'll edit it later. you
What
know
great
um
experience for her.
and
Yeah.
and so I told her, I go, but in poetry, I told her, sometimes you can get away with that. Or in poetry, sometimes you don't need to worry about a comma or a period, or stuff like that. So don't worry so much about those things, but worry about these things. So yeah, it was fun seeing her excited about it,
Yeah. Well,
because it's
Edward,
going to be hers. I'm trying to build something that will hopefully one day sustain itself and be great. I want to struggle with it. I want to be the part of Flower Song Press that struggles, that cries and bleeds and has the headaches, so that it's smoother when she takes over. And I want her to learn the simple things. I want her to learn how to do the typesetting, and how to put a book together, and do all the things that are very hard for me, so that it's easier for her, so that maybe she can train people to do it, and maybe find ways to save money, and so that I can leave something for her. Because at the end, I want Flower Song Press, to be left to, if it's not her, to to my wife, or just another female in the world.
right. That sounds great. Edward, we would you be willing to, if there are any questions from the public, to take questions?
Yeah, not a problem.
Sergio, are there any questions?
Not yet. We can
Okay,
give
well,
it a
if
second.
anybody has any, now's the time to ask them. But Edward, one of my favorite quotes uh, about writing is I think it was Robert Frost. I encountered it in some book about craft, and he says, a writer should either farm or else cheat his employer. You know, which he means that if you farm, then there's some seasons when you're just waiting for it to grow, and there's very minimal work, and so you write during those seasons, and um, or you cheat your employee. You do what when you're working. Do you cheat your employer? Do you, as you're walking into the as you're going into the walk-in to get some more fries out of the another box of fries, do you sometimes say, wait a minute, and then start writing poetry?
It's funny. I've never done that, and it trips me out because I just a couple of days ago thought I am going to write a collection on being a poet as an essential worker at a restaurant and write poetry about what I've witnessed as a restaurant manager. Maybe it won't come out as poetry, maybe it'll come out as short stories. But last night, last night there was a kid who didn't want to get out of his high chair. They were there for 3 hours and the kid didn't want to get out. They were watching the basketball game, but the little boy was tired. He was crying and he didn't want to get out. And every time they tried to pull him out, he would lock his legs and he was afraid to get out. I had to dismantle the high chair with an L
Wow.
wrench. I had to cut with the scissors the belt, the strap, and then I had to use that L wrench to take off the little bar in front of him to get the little boy out. I bribed them with ice cream. I bribed them with crayons. I bribed them with, a lot of things. I told the parents maybe because the little boy had a cell phone with him. I go, take away the cell phone. Let's lay the high chair on the floor and pull him out. And it was, and then the other people that were with them in the party kept ordering beer because they figured we're not going anywhere. So it's just there's so many things that happen and I've never written anything, not a poem, not a story, nothing about my adventures as a restaurant manager, and I've been doing this for 30 years
Wow.
plus.
Well, there's definitely
And
got to be at least a novel there. We have a question. Somebody says, being in contact with so many authors and reading their work, does it inspire you in your own writing?
yeah, all the time. um it inspires me all the time, reading their writings, and sometimes it could be a phrase or just a line or a reminder of something. I mean, I get the little, you know rush to write on just sometimes real simple things, and it's kind of sometimes just like a piquete. It could be a word that just brings back memories or brings back, something that can even be a scent. I've read words that sometimes bring back the memories of what something smelled like, and it's sometimes in the writings, and that's why I love to read, because uh, I'm at an age, I think, where I forgot everything and I forget everything before I start remembering everything. Because they say that when you're old, you remember everything. I think I'm at the age where I forgot everything, and I'm
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to,
that's not
you
true.
know.
When you're old, you don't remember everything.
Yeah. So I try to write down as much as possible. I've got on my phone on the notes pad. I swear, if I go back to the beginning, I've got so many notes on things that just conjure up memories. But yeah, just conversations with people, are very inspiring and get me to write sometimes. And reading. If I didn't read, I wouldn't be doing what I do today.
Hey,
I
do you
th-
sleep?
yeah.
How many hours a day do you sleep?
Let's see. Last night I got home at 2, went to bed at 2:30, woke up at 4:30, went back to bed, woke up at 7:30. So about 4 hours, 5 hours.
Oh my God, young man, you need to get some rest. Do we have one? We have another question. Somebody who wants to start a publishing company, coming from the angle of a book designer. Her name is Leo. Uh, she she wants to know, how the F do you fund publishing? She actually just wrote characters, but I'm translating it to how the heck do you fund publishers? She says she wants to be able to pay her authors in advance one day, but she can hardly imagine covering the cost of printing the book, especially if one wishes to support overlooked voices. We kind of touched on this, but maybe you can give
Well,
a full How do you do it? How do you pay for it?
well, the whole paying authors in advance, I think that comes when you're established and you have a, you know, like amount of money put away, I think, because it's it's a gamble. I mean, for you to say, hey, I want to publish you, but I'm going to give you, you know, so much money in advance. I could see it with, like, hey, you're Stephen King. I know you're going to sell 1 million books,
Right,
so we're
right.
going to give you this amount of money. But a small press, I think it's different.
Yeah,
For
small
those
presses
that do,
generally don't
for
give.
those
Yeah,
yeah,
small
for those
presses,
that do
virtual
give
press.
advances, for those small presses, if you do give advances, man, I want to know how you do it. But
Yeah,
but I think that's a tough one. But if you want to pay your authors, I mean, you pay them with, from the sales of the books that they sell, you
right.
know, and I guess the best you could do is help them get their voices out there. And what I try to do too is try to get them. I talk about them all the time. I talk them up when I see somebody put something on like Twitter. What book are you reading right now, or what book should I read today? I always say one of my authors. I'll never like say myself. I'll say one of my authors, or I'll put the presses website so they can look at the books. Or if somebody says, oh, I got a paying gig, do you know anybody who wants to come and read for an hour at a school? If it's in the vicinity of a local author that I published, I'll say, yeah, I know the perfect person that can do it, and I'll get them that gig. Sometimes it's a $250 for half an hour or an hour. It could be up to $750 for an all day gig, or $1,000, or $3,000, whatever. But that's how you can help. Other than that, the authors need to put in work um, for themselves.
Right.
That's a given.
It's
That's a for
interesting because
sure.
that is the way publishing works now. It used to be, especially independent presses. I mean, this is across the board. If you're being published by an independent press, you're an independent author. You have to do the work to sell your books, and if you want to make any money, you're most likely going to make it from reading engagements with a stipend, or selling your own books at the end, selling your own books at those that you get. In your case, your authors would get 50%. It's uh, it's definitely a lot of work, and especially now, a writer, if they're going to make any money, they need to get out there. They need to interact with the public. They need to have a social media presence, unfortunately, but it's the truth. And do you know that there are casting directors who cast for Netflix or for Amazon Prime or for any of these big, streaming services that are doing original content, that will choose an actor, even if it's for a small part, based on how many Twitter followers they have, based on how many Instagram followers they have, because the more they bring attention, the more people are gonna. I'm wondering if you
Right.
think that'll ever happen with publishing, that someday publishers will make choices based not on the quality of the manuscript, but on the social media popularity of the author.
I've heard and I've read authors on Twitter say that press has said you have to have so many Twitter followers or even to get an agent. And
Right.
I always thought I have a bunch of Twitter followers, but because I follow everybody,
Right.
but I don't even know who they are. I don't know, and they don't know who I am. And you know, and I base people that are relevant on my social media as friends on how many books I sell, right? So out of the 5,000 friends that I have, and I've put out a fundraiser, you know, and I've got $500 of the $10,000 I'm trying to raise, that tells me, you know, a lot. You know, it tells me, okay, I've got 5,000 friends. If everybody gave $10 from my 5,000 friends, man, FlowerSong Press would be like, we'd be lumbre right now. We'd be
Yeah.
like, you
Well,
know,
well, I'm glad you're
we'd
not
be,
doing that because I would unfriend you right now.
you know what I mean? But you know, I put it out there, and you just you know, hope for the best,
Yeah. And so
and
it,
whatever you get, you put it to work, you know, whether it's $400 or $10,000, you put that piece to work. So it could be a cover to a book, or it could be a plane ticket for an author to come, you know, to, you know, Austin for a book festival, whatever.
yeah,
But
in the future, maybe next time we'll do a series on how writers can create opportunities to make money for themselves. Because I think that would be really helpful for a lot of independent writers, that there are strategies you could use to make, if not a living, at least to supplement whatever it is that you have to do, to write. But
and
Ed, you were going to say something?
and to those that are wondering how do they do it, look at those that are doing it or that are successful at it and ask them, how do you do it? You know, I'll do that. I'll reach out to people and say, hey man, I noticed that you're doing this. How are you doing it? You
Right.
know, how you know, what happened, what steps did you take? And so there's no shame in asking for it, you know. There's no shame in trying to get advice from people, you know. Again, you're a community. If you don't, you have to act, you have to be able to reach out to people and find out. You have to be human. You can't pretend, you know, I'm not going to sit on my leather chair and pretend, ha, 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 I'm doing this. No, sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes, you know, it's a struggle, you know, but I reach out and I look for ways. Just today I had a meeting for about an hour with you know, New Jersey poet laureate, you know, Rescue Poetics, and we went over things like grant writing and looking for, you know, writing a work description for our internships to see if we can get, you know, students that are looking for, you know, you know, a way to work with a press that can help with like social media management and how I can help them and they can help me. So find different ways to work together in my own community. But there's no shame in asking those that are doing really good at things, because that's how things work. You don't just stand back and pretend that you're doing well. You continue to work at trying to be better.
I'm in the fall of next year, I'm going to teach an MFA seminar on how to start an independent press, which is, we're going to use this interview actually as part of the resources for the students. But I think also what we need to cover is, how do you sell your book? Once your book is out there, you're going to be the one responsible for selling it. But one of the things that I think would be really helpful is if you could close this conversation with what advice you would give to somebody who wants to start a publication company. What would your number one advice be?
Somebody who wants to start a publication,
A company.
uh
They want to start the next FlowerSong press.
okay, I would say learn to do everything, learn how to create a book from scratch, from the typesetting to the cover art, putting it together, to sending it to the printer, the editing phase, have a marketing plan for it, all of that. Be able to just take one book and do all that for one book, and patience,
That's great advice.
and
No,
have patience, because know how to do it. Again, I always use the being the restaurant manager, I know how to wash dishes. I know how to bartend. I know how to cook. I know how to bus tables. I know how to wait tables. I know how to manage the restaurant. I can do everything in the restaurant. So nobody can come to me and tell me, you don't know my job. You don't know how hard it is. You don't know what I'm going through. No, I do. And I can send you home and take over your job because you don't want to do it. So in publishing, it's like being able to, you know if everything's falling apart around you, being able to say, okay, i I'm gonna do this, but find ways to save money, you know so that you can make more money for not only the press but for your authors, you
right.
know and I'm still learning a lot of it because I was never really that tech savvy, so it's getting to there. I mean, I just learned how to do a few things here and there in the last month, and man, I'm so like excited about it, and I'm like, okay, it gave me so much, um it gave me such a moral boost to know that I was able to do those things, that I feel like once I learn how to do this other part, man, it's gonna get even better.
Yeah.
So, but along the way, I'm continuing to do the things like reading books on editing, reading books on writing, so that I'm also listening to the books that are coming in and reading them and giving them the attention that's needed, and the love and the care to the words that are being sent to the press, so that it's the public is still getting quality literature, and it's not just a bunch of books going out just because a bunch of books are going out.
Right. I think that is a brilliant metaphor. The restaurant manager should know how to wash dishes, cook, waitress, every aspect of the job if you want the restaurant to function efficiently. If you're going to start a publication company, know what the process is. That's great advice. Edward Vidaurre is the publisher of Flower Song Press, flowersongpress.com. Um, Check it out. Look at his titles. Look at the submission guidelines if you're a writer. Tomorrow at the same time, I am going to be interviewing Lau Cesarco, who is the publisher and founder of Velis Books, which just kind of blossomed into this amazing publisher that's doing great titles. And then we just added another one next week, time to be announced. I am going to be having a conversation with Maria Maloney, who also started her own press. It's called Mouthfeel Press. And she kind of went in hiatus for a while, but she's back more enthusiastic than ever. Um, so stick around for those conversations. And Edward, thank you so much for joining us. And we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. Look forward to everything that you're doing with this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Sergio, you want to go ahead and
Yes,
say
I'll end
goodbye
it.
to everybody?
Okay, thank you everybody for being here. We'll see you tomorrow.